I'm here with Yellow Pop from the Dusk network. The Dusk network is a new protocol that finds the sweet spot between privacy and transparency. Thank you very much for joining on the noisy streets of Shoreditch.
Pleasure, my pleasure.
Yeah, I guess to start off with, it'd be really cool just to get a bit of an introduction to the Dusk network, what problem you're solving. I think would be good to start.
Not a problem. So I'm the business lead for Dusk Network, so Yellow Pop, like you mentioned, and the big thing about Dusk Networks is to set the scene. It's a new blockchain, right? So it's not a fork, it's not built on top of anything, it's a new protocol, as you rightly said. And the big thing that we're introducing is flexible privacy. So whereas in the blockchain space today, where privacy is very binary, so either a ledger is fully open, like Ethereum, or fully closed, like Monero, we're kind of introducing a little bit of flexibility there. The reason for this is that kind of for mass adoption, many use cases have quite high privacy requirements, but also quite high transparency requirements. And this is different per use case. So we really wanted to create a protocol where you can create all kinds of things on top of, and kind of per use case, use the privacy and transparency settings that are required for your kind of chance of mass adoption, if you will. We're achieving this by using zero-knowledge cryptography to implement compliance and confidentiality on-chain, and the goal is really to exactly. The goal is to take out the middleman of regulated markets, basically, but without losing regulatory compliance. We're focusing on three big use cases. It's payments, and there you can kind of see us as like a faster version of Monero that's also regulator friendly. We're focusing on communication, so think video, audio, file transfer, streaming, and we're focusing on digital assets. So security tokens, for example, is one of our biggest focuses because we really see the protocol to be extremely well suited for it.
Before we get into the use cases, because there's thousands, maybe a little bit more on the sort of novel consensus algorithm. So Byzantine, segregated
Byzantine agreement.
What is that? What is that? Why is it different to proof of work, proof of stake? Why is it better?
Yeah, so when we were building Dusk Network originally, we were looking at existing solutions out there in the market, but we couldn't really find a consensus mechanism that suited our needs for the protocol we wanted to build, right? So there's issues around proof of work. Well, it's just extremely energy consuming, right? And for us, this is, well, it's just a big blocker. It's something that kind of should be solved. I think, we should see that as the first steps of blockchain. And proof of stake is tricky because it's very hard to implement strong privacy because of the nature of staking, right? So you often have to publicly commit these stakes. And it's just very, very tricky to introduce strong privacy here. So this kind of forced our hand to create their own consensus mechanism, and there's been a long kind of research phase ongoing for the past year, which led to the creation of segregated Byzantine agreement, and it's basically built from the ground up to focus on the first hand on privacy, so introducing very, very strong privacy, whilst also being fast and efficient enough to actually carry these use cases, right?
And one of the things that everyone always asks is, how is this new blockchain run? Is there an opportunity for verifiers, block producers? How does that work?
Yeah, so we're Dusk Network also features a node economy, if you will. Yeah. So there's two big node types. So there's one node that is transactional, so they kind of perform transactions. Transactions run through these type of nodes, and these guys compete for block rewards, right? But rather than using proof of work, where you, for example, mine to solve a problem, and if you solve it first, you get the reward. We use a process called sortition, which you can kind of compare to a lottery, and kind of the winner of this lottery allows you to propose a block, and if that is then correctly verified by the other node type, then you get the block rewards. And this other type of node is called a provisioner, and they perform kind of all the intensive stuff in the network. So it's verification, voting, and notarization. And the reason for splitting this is that it allows you to introduce quite a lot of privacy on the transactional nodes, because they're only doing transactions, and that's kind of the stuff you want to keep private. And you can introduce there's a little bit more transparency on the nodes that are doing the kind of the heavy lifting, because there's no kind of money in there, or there's no kind of reason to introduce a lot of privacy there, right? It's just where the kind of computation is happening, and even the computation is very, very light, and these guys earn not block rewards, but a bit more of a kind of steady ROI type reward.
Excellent. So protocol, big three use cases that you're focusing on.
Yes.
One of many. So payments, asset transfer. One of those security tokens is a big one. Could you explain a little bit sort of why you chose that as your first use case? How far along that road are you? Do you have partnerships in the pipeline? This sort of thing.
So I'll take the question bit by bit. Basically, when we look at the security token space, it's kind of the big $1 trillion market, right? At least that's how it's perceived by many, and I tend to agree.
And no one's quite cracked it yet. It's sort of it's there.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've heard so much noise around security tokens, and there's so many solutions out there, but still I haven't participated in an STO, or I don't own a security token. So why, after all this noise, is it still not there, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons for this. And kind of a few of the big reasons are, for example, that a lot of these studios are implementing on top of an open ledger, which kind of struggles with all types of regulations around market manipulation and trade secrecy and all this kind of stuff. So imagine, you're a huge fund and you have a 5 million position in the security token, right? And you want to sell this position and you move it to an exchange, but it's a public ledger. People are tracking this kind of stuff, and all of a sudden you start dumping your own price. And in a regulated market, this is basically illegal. So not only do you destroy your own value, you're also creating this kind of slippage effect that you want to avoid, right? In a proper market, and not to mention things like trade secrecy, where you don't even want your competitors to know your positions, right? That's the whole, these funds are competing. So there needed to be a lot of privacy kind of introduced there, not only for the user and the business, but also for the regulators to be happy, which made kind of that balance very, very well suited for security tokens. And the focus just vastly increased because kind of the size of the price is just very, very large. And we want to capture a lot of that value in the token and in the Dusk currency, rather than leave it out there for kind of suboptimal solutions to kind of play around with it a little bit. And we have a lot of relevant partnerships. So
this is why there's a lot of people out there that are trying this. There's a lot of sort of tech that sounds good. But what makes you think that you can put this into practice on the ground? What makes you different?
So that's a very valid question. I think the big difference is that our protocol is basically uniquely built for this, right? And it does this very, very well. So it meets all the privacy requirements, it meets all the transparency requirements. So we're not only complying with the regulators, we're also meeting the needs from the businesses and the users and the traders and you name it. And we're doing all of it on-chain, and that is probably one of the big differences. So what we see with other solutions is that they have to go off-chain for a custodian or for like another financial type institution or a KYC provider, and there's all these kind of middlemen reintroduced because they haven't quite kind of figured out how to reconcile it on-chain, right? But then it becomes extremely gimmicky, because now if we want to transact security tokens, and I press the button, and now we have to wait for someone off-chain to say yes, right? And what's the point? So we've not replaced or improved any reality, any current paperwork reality, or whatever you want to call it. We've just put part of it online, but there's no benefit to it. It's not cheaper for anyone. It's probably more expensive for a lot of people. It doesn't save us time. It doesn't unlock any new possibilities. And because they're off-chain, they're centralized. So we're now relying on these businesses not to go bankrupt. And it leverages none of the blockchain benefits. The way they're meant to be leveraged.
It's really cool. I think it'd be good to touch on the token sale.
Sure.
So. The token sale is kind of pretty unique. We haven't seen anything really like it before. Could you explain a little bit about how it works and why you chose to structure it in that manner?
So we're raising $14.4 million for 50% of our tokens. And a few other relevant parameters, I guess, is that there's no bonuses for anyone, and that we're vesting it over a period of 12 months. What we did on the bonus side is, well, it's not unique, but it rarely happens, right? That there's no bonuses given out, and we just really wanted to create this level playing field. We saw now purely on the kind of market side, the crypto market side of things, right? We see so many stuff kind of dumping or not being liquid, or kind of everything going wrong for all the wrong reasons, right? Because of these early mistakes. So we wanted to prevent people from joining the sale because there's like, oh, there were these guys last month that got this huge bonus, and it also doesn't really make sense, right? Because we see a value and we see the target raise, and you know, if that's what you need to run a project, then why would the token be a different price for others? And we continue this policy with our advisors, for example. So we have roughly like 10 or 12 advisors on board now. And they are locked very, you know, their compensation is locked very long, and they're vested for even longer, and their compensation is also quite low, and they're on board because they believe in the project and they have something to add. But there's none of these crazy kind of shady backroom deals, right? Yeah. So there's no, everything is out there, right? So literally the initial liquidity will be the people that participated in the sale. There's no one else in any position to, you know, kind of to play. So yeah, it's up to the participants. They're vested to, well, of course, tie them to the project for longer, but to also make it a nice ramp up in liquidity whilst not creating cliffs. So it's linear. It's not like monthly, for example. And we just wanted to kind of move towards a bit more of a kind of best practice attitude in you know, in a space that was rife with all kinds of kind of misconduct and scams and all that kind of stuff.
And this is why we're really excited to have you as the first token sale on the Ethfinex platform, because that fits with our values as well. You know, I haven't seen many projects where everyone is investing on a level playing field, and no one gets sort of special treatment no matter what they bring to the party. And in fact, from being on your Telegram group, you're actually turning people away from your private sale if they don't bring anything special to the project, which is really, really cool. So your token will be available for Ethfinex users to participate in the first token sale. Very, very excited to have you on the platform. Hope it all goes well. Final roundup, where can people find out more about Dusk?
Well, so we have our website, dusk.network, and on there it's probably the easiest to find all the other good stuff, right? So we use Medium a lot. That's where almost everything gets posted and announced first. Then we have a big presence on Telegram. And then there's various other kind of bits and bobs, right? You know, Twitter, GitHub, you name it, and it's all available on.
Are you planning any roadshows over the next month or so?
Very good question. The physical presence. So
we're actually come and find you and grab you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so we're in London now, obviously. We are in Berlin later this week, so that is the 26th of October, I think. The next week we'll be in Malta from 29th until the 3rd, I believe. Then we'll be in Tel Aviv the week after, and then I think Amsterdam.
Excellent.
So that's the next 4 weeks, and I don't really capture anything beyond that.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. And all the best of luck for the upcoming token sale and the future.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for hosting.